Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Our guest today holds a degree in performance psychology, an international speaker and author who helps turn businesses from rat race to work happy place. And today she's going to show you how to stop beating yourself up. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help us welcome to the Mental Detox podcast, our good friend, Nikki Thomas.
Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. Hello to everyone that's just watching as well.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me on.
It's always a pleasure, and you've had to get up out of bed early, so we truly appreciate that. But you're a woman who's worked your way all around the world. You've worked in Europe, you've worked in Asia, you've gone all the way past Australia, all the way to New Zealand. You've worked with the banks, you've worked with professional services and law firms, and lived a very high life. And through all of that, it ended up in burnout. How can you go from the top to the bottom in a couple of years?
It's quite easily, actually.
Let's be honest.
But I think you get caught up in it, and you just, everyone's doing what you're doing and you follow everybody else. So I remember everyone else was staying late. You wanted to stay late. You never wanted to be the first one to go home. And you always wanted to be the one that was traveling. You didn't want to be the one stuck at the desk. It was what made you successful. Or what from people thought that you were successful, because you were traveling every month and you were, you were always seen to be at the office, and you were the one that was working till 11 o'clock at night because it made you look important. So you sort of fall into this trap where you think, this is what people do, so I need to be doing it too. And you just get caught on that sort of hamster wheel, and you're just going and going and going until you get to a point when, and it was for me, I actually went to China and then went to Indonesia. And when I went to Indonesia, I got really badly bitten by a ridiculous amount of like mozzies and things. And it was just because my immune system was so low. And I just remember ending up being in agony, and I walked around in my shoes. I couldn't really get on properly because my feet were so swollen from mozzie bites. It's horrible, but still wearing high heels and walking around and trying to still do my job.
Gotta look good.
And afterwards I got back and I sort of slept for a week. I was absolutely exhausted, and it was just that I was just living that life and just trying to keep going as long as I could. And in the end, you just get to a point where you realize that you're exhausted after the weekend, but then you're exhausted the day after that, and then the day after that, and you struggle to get out of bed. And then it just got to a point where you just wonder how long this is going to go on for, because it's never ending. You don't get, a 2-week holiday, because that 2-week holiday you spend, at the time I was glued to my BlackBerry. That's what everybody had back then.
That's a long, that must have been around about year 2010, was it?
Yeah, it was. Blackberries. It was a while back. But yeah, like you just end up just almost being at the mercy of your employer, but you don't realize it because you're made to think that you're doing well.
So you're moving towards burnout, and knowing what you now know, what were some of those little signs that started to pop up? You mentioned fatigue. What else started to happen?
I think you end up, you're not being good. You're just not good at your job. You get angry. I think one of the things that I found was that I had a really short fuse at that time. Like you go from 0 to 100 really quickly. I think also you become annoyed if people aren't working as hard as you. And really they've managed to understand there's a work-life balance and you haven't, but you're annoyed at them.
Were you talking to my wife before this? Because she might be mentioning some of my signs and symptoms here.
There you go. Work-life balance.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a tough one, because you notice it, and you notice that little things such as family. You come home and you don't have time. Like that's it. You don't have time for loved ones. You don't have time for children. You don't have time for anything, because work is the most important thing. And you forget about your friends, because your friends don't matter, because it's all about work. And I think that's when you start realizing that you can't have it all. You can't be everything to work and still be everything to everyone else around you as well.
So Nikki, when you share that, how long take you to decide and, I should make a change, because I know there's people out there, they always think, oh, I want to change job, but I'm not sure if that's the right thing for me, because changing a career path can be very scary. Like for me, I've been, my background is a cabin crew. I always been cabin crew with 3 different airlines. So one day when I decided I have to change a career path, it's scary. So what kind of advice that you will have?
What she's trying to tell you that she didn't listen to her body. We're in Dubai. The same time you're going through burnout, Ninny's connected to pacemakers and heart machines and trying to figure out what's wrong. She's spending 45 days straight off work because she's so sick. So what she's trying to say is, what should have she known back then?
Yeah, that's kind of true. But, for some audience out there, what do they have to think about before they change their career?
It's a tough one, because that's the thing. Only you can do it, because even as you say, you can be connected to pacemakers, you can be connected to all, hospital equipment. And unless you make the decision that you are going to stop, unfortunately, everyone else around you can tell you, and you just won't listen, because you need to make that decision yourself. So I think that's the biggest thing. What I wish I had known is that when everyone told me to calm down, I wish I'd listened, but you have to make the decision yourself. And I think actually one of the biggest things is actually realizing that when your life is only about work, when you slowly realize that you're not being invited to as many social engagements as you used to, when you realize that your friends and your family around you are actually quite worried about you, and they're also quite angry that you've become this different person. I think that's when you need to turn around and say, okay, I probably need to find a different path here. But you have to make that decision yourself, as with anything. And I know that we were talking about self-sabotage earlier, and the problem is that it's so much easier to stick doing what you're doing than it is to make change. And sometimes people just say, I'm just going to stay on the hamster wheel because it's easier than getting off it and trying to find a different path.
Yeah. With self-sabotage in career success, how do people sabotage themselves from your perspective, and how does that contribute to burnout as well?
I think it's that people don't want to make a change in their life. People want loads of things. I always hear from clients, I wish I had a job where I could spend more time with my family. It's like, okay, well, what do you want from that job? Oh, but I still want the money. Okay, you can still have that, but you need to start figuring out what kind of change you want to make. Well, I don't want to change my job. Well, then if you don't want to change your job and you want to keep the same salary and you want everything to stay the same, but you want to spend more time with your family, have you thought about talking to your employer? Oh, no, they won't allow that. And it's almost like they put these hurdles in place that if you don't want to change anything, then nothing will change. And it's just so hard. And I know that making a change is hard. I know I moved from Hong Kong back to the UK because I knew that something had to give and something had to change. And it was hard. I mean, I moved back to the UK. I didn't have a job. I ended up living with some friends who were amazing, but they took me in even when I didn't have a job to go to. And I just had to start from scratch and just start again. And it was tough, really tough. But the flip side of it is that once you get through the tough bit, life is so much better on the other side. And I couldn't have stayed doing what I was doing. I don't know if I'd still be around, if I'm honest. I just didn't sleep. I was working with all markets. I was working with Australia and Asia in the morning, England from 5 o'clock, and then America in the evening. So I just never stopped.
Wow.
We had the same experience when I was going to the UK a lot. I'd fly from Sydney to Taiwan. I'd jump on another flight from Taiwan to Dubai. I'd do a bit there, and then I'd go to the UK. And by the time I got there, I was absolutely exhausted already because I hadn't slept, and you can't sleep on the aircraft. And I'd acclimatise. And just as I'd left, I'd just acclimatise, then I'd come back to Taiwan. And it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still staring at the roof. And I think to myself, I don't want to take any medication to go to sleep, so I'll drink some scotch. So half a bottle of scotch later,
Oh no.
I'm intoxicated and still wide awake.
Yes.
and you do this and you think you're invincible until it catches up. And we find as well with emotional intelligence, a lot of people are stuck in that comfort zone. You know, the pain that they're putting themselves through also becomes comfortable for them. And the thought of doing something different is quite frightening.
Yeah,
so
it does.
Through the other side, if you were to calibrate the before and the after state, what are those two differences between where you were back in 2010 and burnout to now? What are these differences that you see in your mind and body?
I think when you are running that hamster wheel, when you think that you're invincible and you're going and going and going, what I think the one thing actually that I wish that I'd known and wish I'd at least I'd love to tell myself now is you're working for someone. You're not in control of your life. You may think that you are because you're running without burning out, although you eventually will burn out, but you're not in control. Now, completely in control. You know, if I want to go to the gym, I can go to the gym, and that is actually a big sort of stress helper for me. But it's also, if I now know when I'm getting to that point. I now know when I've got too many things, and I can say I'm spinning too many plates here. And I still get irritated. I still get irritable. I still find things like, oh, I can't cope with everything. But that's when I just take a day. I take a day where I completely stop and then start putting things back into my life again. Because I don't think anyone can just keep running on empty. You get to a point where you realize that you're just doing too much. And when you've burnt out before, you know you never want to do it again. Like, as you say, 45 or 49 days out of, out of work. You know, once you've burnt out once, you never, ever want to burn out again. And you put measures in place so that you never do it again. You just have to be smart, look after yourself.
We see with executives that we work with, they think they're performing at a high level, but they're far below their potential. And there's some great work on about taking a sabbatical. And they say that if you turn the mobile phone off and the devices off at 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, you leave them off, you detach from work, by 6 a.m. Monday morning when you return to work, you'll actually be 400% more productive. But you've got to learn, you've got to unlearn something, and then you've got to learn something new to know how it feels good. Now, Nini's got another question here for you. Final question.
Final questions. What are we talk about some symptoms, but what are the other little clues for the audience that we can really look at it, like not just physically, but mentally as well? You know, like they will know, wow, this is the right time for me to change, you know, to change the career.
Yeah, I think it's knowing the difference between moaning about work because it's a habit and genuinely thinking that this isn't the right job for me. I think if you're waking up every morning and thinking, I don't want to be going to work, I think that's a really big sign. I know we all have off days. We all have days that we don't want to be going into work. But if you every single day are waking up and just thinking, I don't want to do this, then that's a huge clue. I think the other thing is focus. I think when you're working on something, and I know that I can, if I'm working on something that I really, really love, I'm up, you know, and a lot with my coaching, I'm up, I'm working on it, you know, at 10 p.m. I need to sort of remove myself from working on it because I'm really loving it. And it's not because I'm stressed, it's because I'm really loving what I'm doing. But when I don't want to do something, or when I'm not, and I think this is a lot of people, when you're not too happy in what you're doing, you lose focus. And what makes it so stressful is that you start it and then you pull away from it because you can't focus on it because you're not enjoying it, and you force yourself to do it. And it gets to a point when you get to deadline time and you're stressing because you haven't got it done in time. And I think there's some people that just do that because, and if you've been doing it since school, then fine, that's a certain personality type. But if you genuinely can't focus on the task in hand and you're just, you know, phasing out and you'll do anything to procrastinate and not do it, that's another huge sign that maybe this is not the right job for you and you need to start looking at possibly something else. And it's if you sit there and you've got friends and you're like, they always say about how much they love their job, and nobody ever loves their job. And I've had so many people say this to me. They're like, no one loves their job. Why should, like, it's just the way it is. And it's like, if that's the way that you think, that's what you'll have. But there are thousands, millions of people on this planet that love what they do every day. And you've got to realize that you can have that too, but you've chosen to not have that right now.
Yeah.
And the moment that you make that choice, everything changes.
So the people who are in that state of mind where they're doing what they're doing just because it's paying the bills, and they know they should be following their passions, how can they learn more about your work? What's the best place for them to find you and what you do, and have a look at some of your resources? Because you're an author, you've been writing for the Huffington Post, you've written some incredible articles about this. Where can they learn more about Nikki Thomas?
Oh, brilliant. So all on my website is nikkithomas.me. On top of that, I also put everything, all my articles and everything will go on my Facebook page, which is Nikki Thomas Coach. And I'm also on Instagram at Nikki Thomas Coach as well.
Excellent.
Lovely.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is light, there is day that comes after darkness. Light comes after darkness. And if you're in a career that you don't like and you feel that you're beating yourself up, well, reward yourself with doing what you love. And would encourage you to go over and have a look at the good work of Nikki Thomas. So, Nikki, thank you for getting up early and sharing these insights. And we wish you a wonderful day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Nikki.
Daniel. Thank you, Nini. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.